Well, good morning. It's great to see all of you here in Atlanta. Thanks for coming to Atlanta, for those of you who came here for the event, and thank you for those of you who are tuning from all over the world. We have a remote hosting site in Kuwait, so it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so you guys probably need a little bit extra coffee. We've already had ours, but thanks so much for joining us from all over the world. This is a lot of fun. I love the theme. I love the theme because today's theme is a theme with a twist, and here's what I mean by that. The title for the day is The Brave Ones. We're going to talk about leading with boldness. And most of us, if we were super honest, would say, I'm neither. I'm neither brave, nor am I bold. And so perhaps when you found out about the theme, or maybe when you got here, or maybe when you tuned in, you thought, I'm just going to be a spectator because there's going to be like a lot of extroverts on the stage talking really loud, reminding me of the boss I used to have, a little bit over the top, a little bit arrogant, smoking cigars in the back. And so that's not me. So I don't think I'm brave. I'm not bold. I'm not sure this conference is for me. I'm going to feel like a spectator. But the great news is this is a theme with a twist. So to start off with, I want to explode a few myths as it relates to being brave and being a bold leader. Then I want to give you a specific definition for bold leadership. Then I'm going to give you 2 questions that are going to help you make your way to that thing that'll give you the opportunity to express boldness through your personality. And then if there's time, I'm going to tell you a story. So first of all, let's talk about some bold leadership myths. 4, really quick. The first one is simply this, that bold leadership is reserved for bold people. Not true. Bold leadership is not reserved for bold people. This has nothing to do with the personality trait. This is not simply a conference for extroverts, all the introverts in the room. You're going to be fine. This is not a conference just for extroverts. In fact, how many introverts, and I know if you're an introvert, you don't even want to raise your hands, but let's just kind of, all the introverts, high and bold. This might be the boldest thing you've ever done. Right there it is. You raise your hand in public. It's dark. Nobody can see you. Right. The other myth is simply this, that bold, and this is important, that bold leadership is somehow reserved for fearless people. Absolutely not the case. In fact, the greatest insight you may get from me all day is this next one. All the fearless people are dead. Everybody has fear. Your fear isn't going to go away until you're dead. So all the fearless people are dead. Everybody has fear. So bold leadership is not about somehow having no fear. The third myth is simply this, that bold leadership requires some sort of specific gift or talent. Not the case. In fact, as my dad has told me my entire life, Andy, if you're not careful, your giftedness will get in the way of your potential. That sometimes extraordinarily gifted people or talented people lean so heavily into their gift or their talent, they miss opportunities. This has nothing to do with a specific gift. It has nothing to do with a specific talent. And the last one, that bold leadership is for the ultra smart or the ultra resourced. Now let me tell you a secret about really, really smart people, okay? About the ultra smart. This will help you. This helps me tremendously. Or maybe it's just a defense mechanism for me because I made B's, okay? It's simply this. Sometimes the super smart people are so smart, they talk themselves out of really good ideas because they know 25 reasons why it shouldn't work because they're so smart. Us B and C people, we are not quite smart enough to know that we shouldn't try, right? And then you can hire all those A students to work for you later, okay? So this has nothing to do with IQ, and it has nothing to do with being ultra-resourced. Think about it. Every success story you've heard, except for a few exceptions, people did not start off with resources. People started off with an idea. People didn't start off because they were resourced. They started off because they were committed to getting something done, and they found the resources. So if you're in this room, introvert, extrovert, bold, not bold, in charge of something, not in charge of something, resource, not resource, talented, not sure you have a talent, not even sure you can correctly spell talent, doesn't matter. You have the potential, this is what we want you to hear starting off today. You have the potential to exhibit bold leadership. So now that you know what it's not, let me give you an idea of what it is. And I think word pictures are better than anything. So if you forget everything else about bold leadership, as we start the day together, I want to give you just in your mind's eye a word picture of what is bold leadership. And the best one I could come up with, I got 3 kids, 2 sons and a daughter, everybody's in college, so I've kind of navigated those teenage years. I think the best picture of bold leadership is simply this. A middle school girl in pursuit of an iPhone. How many of you have gotten through middle school years with 1 or 2 or 3 kids? Right. A middle school girl without an iPhone will display all the characteristics of bold leadership. All of them. You'll just remember this. For example, because there's just 4. Clarity. She knows exactly what she wants. No confusion over what she wants. Focus. Homework can wait. In fact, everything can wait. I got to have an iPhone. Third, stubbornness. Now, this is usually seen as a negative thing. Tony Dungy says that stubbornness is a virtue when you're right. Stubbornness is a virtue when you're right. Middle school girl and looking for an iPhone, extraordinarily stubborn, and last but not least, resourceful. Because if mama won't buy it, daddy will. If daddy won't buy it, grandmama will. If grandmama won't buy it, granddaddy will. And if that doesn't work out, we'll just go to the other set of grandparents. But somehow, some way, I am going to get myself an iPhone. Those are the characteristics of bold leadership. That's why every single one of us in this room and every single person watching has the potential to be a bold leader. So let me give you an actual definition, then I'm going to give you one more word picture, then we're going to move on. Bold leadership in terms of the day and how we're defining it for the day is simply this: clarity around an unreasonable, that's the key word, that's the operative word. Clarity around an unreasonable commitment to what should be. Clarity around, I know exactly what we need to do. I know exactly the direction we need to move in. I know exactly where we need to put all of our eggs, and I know exactly where the one basket is. And an unreasonable, stubborn neglect of all other things commitment to what should be. Something must be. One other word picture, and I think this kind of brings some emotion to what can be, sort of a static definition. This past couple of weeks, we've all watched the chaos in Baltimore. And in Baltimore, there were all kinds of people with all kinds of titles and positions that found themselves scrambling around and trying to leverage their influence and leverage their, leadership to get something done and to solve that problem, to address those issues as they should. But there was one undisputed bold leader that emerged in Baltimore. Maybe you saw this. This is Toya Graham right here. When Anderson Cooper asked her if she was concerned about embarrassing her son, she said, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I love this. Here's what she said. This is fantastic. I wasn't there to be recorded. What were you there for? What was your goal? What was your mission? What were you trying to accomplish? Did you have it on a card? Did you keep it on your mirror? I was there to get my child. Could you be a little clearer? But what were you trying to do? We're confused. There was no confusion. I wasn't there to be seen. I wasn't there to impress anybody. I wasn't there because I thought I had something that nobody else had. I had a very specific mission. I was there to get my son. My friends, that is the essence of bold leadership. It is clarity around and an unreasonable commitment to something that should be. And every single one of you, every single one of us has the potential to exhibit that in some arena of life. Larry Martinex, a name that you probably have not heard before. He was a Los Angeles math teacher. And it drove him crazy that kids hated math. And he just thought kids shouldn't hate math. And he discovered why kids hated math, and he created his own approach to teaching math. He started out by teaching his son, Nick. Then he began to teach his class. Then he began to teach other classes. Then he began to write it down and document what he found. And then in 2002, he launched Mathnasium. Mathnasium has 500 sites all over the United States, Europe, and in parts of Asia. All because of a guy who decided there is something that isn't, that absolutely should be. And he had an unreasonable commitment to that. Not because of a talent, not because he was resourced, not because he was a bold personality, not because he was an introvert or an extrovert, but he found that thing that was worth leaning his life into. And consequently, his influence is felt all over the country and in many places in the world. We all know this name, and we all know this brand, and we all know this product. But the thing that drove Howard Schultz crazy, and the thing that he got his arms around and his emotions around and his head around, was simply this: that coffee is not about coffee. Coffee is about community. Coffee is about community. And people thought he was crazy. No, coffee is about coffee. He goes, no, you're wrong. I understand something that you don't understand. I see something you don't see. And he bet a whole lot on creating what they call, and what we've all experienced as, the Starbucks experience. Because coffee wasn't about coffee. Coffee was about community. Coffee was about experience. All of us have the potential. All of us have the potential, when we trip over that thing, that idea, that product, that thing that needs to change in our community or our nation. All of us have the potential for bold leadership once we discover what that thing is. Now, here's a little bit of the pushback. Here's a little bit of the problem. If you're a parent, you need to tune into this. If you've tuned out, you're doing something else, or if you're already bored on the other end of the camera out there in your remote sites, or you got some problems, you really, really need to hear this. Bold leaders, and you all have that potential. Bold leaders refuse to be cowed by how. I want us to read this out loud. This is huge. All together, all of our remote sites, even if you're watching this by yourself, that's going to be weird, but read it out loud anyway. Okay, here we go. Ready? Bold leaders refuse. Now here's the thing. You can how a great idea to death. And for those of you who run organizations or franchises, you can how a great idea right out the door. If you don't believe me, ask the owners of Handy Dan Home Improvement Centers. Handy Dan Home Improvement Centers. This was one of the first home improvement retail chains. But you can't ask the owners, because they shut their doors in 1989. Just a few years after firing Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank, who went on to found the what? The Home Depot, yes. So when someone in your organization, when someone in your family, ladies, when your husbands, when your wife, parents, when your children, when somebody in your organization or your family walks up and they say, I've got an idea, you say, wow, not how, okay? Everybody together out loud, wow, not how. You do not want to how a good idea to death, and you certainly don't want to how an idea to your competition, and you certainly don't want to shut down your kids' good ideas, because if they make it, they pay for your retirement, okay? So we're going to be about wow, not how. So ladies, seriously, and Sandra and I laugh about this all the time, because I've got an idea every day. And she's learned he's never going to follow through, so I don't have to worry about it. He's too busy to follow through on any of his good ideas. So when I come up with Sandra, I got this idea and I've been thinking about this thing, she just looks at me and smiles, because she's heard me teach this, and she goes, wow. Wow, hey, can you clean out the dishwasher? I'll be back in a few minutes. Wow, Mr. Big Idea Guy, right? Wow, not how. Now, it's funny, but I'm telling you, this is super important. The how question is a bad habit. It's a bad habit. And if you work in finance and you're in accounting and you're a responsible person, I know immediately you go to, how much will it cost? How much will it cost? How much will it cost? Listen. Nobody who's ever accomplished anything of any significance in the corporate, the for-profit, or the nonprofit world, none of that would have happened if they had stopped with, how are we going to pay for it? Because bold leaders are like a middle school girl looking for an iPhone, pursuing an iPhone. They are resourceful. They decide it's got to be. They have clarity around, remember our definition, clarity around an unreasonable commitment to what should be. Now, the question, the difficult thing about this topic is just like, Andy, that's great. And, if I thought of, connecting, community with coffee, maybe I'd be a gazillionaire by now. And, I never did learn to do math at all, so I'm not going to start mathnasium, and this is all great, but how do you know? I mean, how do you know? How do you get clarity? And how do you know the answer to the question, what should be? So what I want to do is I want to help you discover or recognize that thing. And the way I want to do that, and the way I want to help you do that for others, is I want to give you two what I call breadcrumb questions. Now, you know what the whole analogy or the word picture for breadcrumb is? You need to lay out breadcrumbs, and people follow the breadcrumbs, and they end up where they're supposed to be. Or in the case of Hansel and Gretel, it did not work out so well. But anyway, that aside. The whole idea of breadcrumbs is putting something out there that leads us to where we ultimately need to be. So I want to give you two extraordinary questions that I believe with all my heart, and I'll give you a couple of illustrations, that if you will place these two questions front and center for your management team, your leadership team, your partner, your franchise, your home business, whatever it might be, you put these two questions front and center and you sit on these and you let them bother you. These two questions are so powerful. They may indeed lead you to that thing that you give all of your energy to, and it becomes the thing that's the context in which you get to exhibit bold leadership that has the potential to change your community, your industry, your franchise, your company, or who knows, the world. Now, the first question is a head question. The second question is a heart question. The first question comes from an author named Joel Barker. In 1992, he'd published a book called Future Edge that did not do very well, I guess, because they changed the name of the book to Paradigm. The Paradigm book, we call it. Now, only the reason I say that is I have written a bunch of books, and whenever the publisher says, hey, Andy, we're thinking about maybe changing the name of the book, that is not a good phone call. That means nobody's buying the book, so we're going to try something else, okay? So they changed the name of the book. But in 1992, when this book came out, Future Edge, I read the book. I'm about halfway through the book, and I bump into a question, 1992, that wrecked me, and I'm going to share it with you in just a second. This is the question that led me and my team to a breakthrough in our industry. Now, as some of you know, I'm a pastor, and you don't usually think of church as an industry, but we think of it as an industry because it's what we do. We're always trying to figure stuff out. We're all about leadership, making it bigger and better, and moving further and faster. That's why I love to study leaders. So this was the question that led us to the breakthrough that took us from where we were to where we are today. And here's the question. I'm going to say, are you ready? And I want you to say, I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. Everybody all over the world, you guys ready? In your language. Wish we could have heard that. That would have been awesome. Okay, so here's the question. Ready? Joel Barker, 1992. What do I believe is impossible? What do I believe is impossible to do in my field, but if it could be done, would fundamentally change my business? That is an amazing, amazing question. What do I believe, which means everybody else believes, is impossible? Oh, that couldn't happen. But if somebody figured that out, it would fundamentally change the field I work in and would ultimately change my business. And let me tell you why this is so important. Even if you are not the person or the company that has the breakthrough idea, you need to know the answer to this question for two reasons. Number one, you may come up with the answer to the question, what is the thing that would be a breakthrough for my industry or my business? But more importantly, if you'll lock and load on this question, and if you come up with the right answer to this question, when you hear about somebody else messing with that question, and when you hear about somebody else potentially coming up with an answer to the question that you come up when you answer that question, you will be first in line to embrace a breakthrough idea, even if it is not your idea. But if you're not asking this question, when you hear about all these crazy people in your industry doing all these crazy things that you tell your team, that won't work. I mean, texting, why don't you just call? That'll never catch on, right? YouTube, I mean, who's gonna put videos of himself on the internet? Everybody, right? So now here's where this broke through for us. In 1992, I read this question. The whole book is tremendous, but this question has been hanging in all of my different offices since 1992. And the question for us in our industry was this, and you don't really care about this, but they let me speak, so just kind of follow this for just a second. In my industry, the lid to leadership and the lid to explosive growth in church world is this. In the church world, you got to find somebody who can keep people awake for 15 to 35 minutes every single Sunday morning and engaged, and people go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to come back next Sunday. And they've also got to be able to lead a growing organization. Well, that's two different skill sets. There's the, person that can talk, and everybody loves it. And then there's the person that can get down to business, raise money, and lead an organization. So the problem was you had to find people who had both of those skill sets all wrapped into one person. That limits the potential. So I remember going to John Maxwell years ago saying, John, because John was a pastor, John, the problem with the local church is great local churches are led. Well by leaders who can also, wow people with their speaking ability. And how many of those are there? Do we have to wait till we find more of those? Have you ever seen a church where there's like the leaders led and the speakers spoke, and you didn't ask the leaders to speak because they're not good speakers, and you dared not let the preacher lead because he couldn't lead himself anywhere. He just wants to study and preach. John said, no, never seen it. So in the meantime, we built our first building. We had an auditorium that sat like 2,700 people, which was massive. And I thought, why do we build it so big? We fill it up once, fill it up twice. Then we did this crazy bold idea. We built another auditorium right behind it. They were joined at the stage. It would be like I would talk to you, then go backstage and then show up on another stage on the other side of this building. So they were connected at the stage. We called them the Siamese sanctuaries, which is a terrible phrase, but they were joined at the stage. And so we got a room that seats 2,700 and a room that seats 2,000. So I preach on one side and we have a giant video screen on the other side. So we got, 2,000 people a couple times a weekend watching me preach, and I'm 30 feet away preaching to a live audience. So one day I walk out of the live side, I'm going back to my office, and one of our business leaders walks out of the video side and he sees me and he goes, hey, Andy. I said, hey, buddy. Didn't know his name. Hey, guy, friend. How's it going? Guy, Okay, sorry. He points over his shoulder at the video room. He says, that really works. That would work anywhere. Walked off. I'm like, duh. Okay, if it would work 30 feet away, I wonder if we could make it work 30 miles away. So we go back to the team. Some of my team had already had this idea, and I'm like, I don't know how about to how them out the organization. So we did something bold. We spent about $35 million building two campuses, one 20 miles north, one 20 miles south, built around the idea that we could free leaders to lead, and all I had to do was speak, because I'm a pretty good speaker. I can keep people awake for 35 minutes in a row on most weekends, okay? So what it did, though, this was a major paradigm shift for the local church and for us, and it just blew up, and now churches all over the world are doing multi-site. We did not invent it, but this is what I want you to hear. We did not invent it, but we were on the lookout for an idea that would allow us to split the leadership role from the preaching role. Because once you do that, there are a lot of people who can lead like crazy, and there are people who can speak like crazy, but now we got people doing what they do best, and our whole world changed, and the entire church world began to change, the Protestant church world. In fact, you hear people talk about megachurch. Megachurch is so yesterday. It's multi-site church, multi-site church, multi-site church. But here's the thing. Because it addressed the issue that was holding us back in our industry. This is why when Steve Jobs went back to Apple in 1997, he did not get everybody together and announce, we're going to build faster computers. Because Steve Jobs knew that building faster computers would not change the computer industry. It wasn't going to put a PC in everybody's home. He didn't walk in and say, we're going to build smaller computers, because building smaller computers wouldn't guarantee that there would be a computer in everybody's home. He walked in, you know what he said? He said, we are going to build computers that are easy to use. Because he knew the breakthrough idea for his field and his industry was not speed, was not cool, was not size, it was ease of use. And suddenly his whole team and that whole business leaned in toward ideas like using a mouse, icons and all the things that have totally revolutionized that world. In your field, in your industry, maybe in your office, in your department, your division, your franchise, there is an idea, there is a problem that needs to be solved, and whoever solves it first owns that space for a while, and whoever gets in line first, because they're waiting for someone to solve it, gets in line second and third, and sometimes second and third becomes first pretty quickly. So you need to wrestle this question to the ground. That's the head question. Heart question is this. The heart question is this. What breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? Every significant nonprofit that has made an impact in the world, and most social movements that have impacted the world, began with a broken-hearted leader. Someone whose heart was so broken over an issue, someone whose heart was so broken over what was happening in their community, their school system, their city, their community, their world, that they decided something has to be done, and they decided not to take no for an answer. Now, this is an extremely important question for all of you. What breaks your heart? It's why Dr. King was in Boston, had this cush teaching job, kind of had it all going on, everything's worked out safe and sound. But what was happening in the South broke his heart. And he took his leadership skills and he came south and changed our world. It's the story of Bob Pierce, who was in China, visiting China, and a mom who can't afford a child hands him her child and says, I can't afford this child. And he had $5 and gave her $5 and gave her the child back, and it changed her world. And he thought to himself, if I can do this, other people can do this. He came back to the United States. His heart was broken. And he launched what would have become World Vision. 4 million children in over 100 countries because of one broken-hearted leader. What breaks your heart? It's the story of Linda and Millard Fuller, who decided it's ridiculous that people can't afford homes. And that, the underprivileged and the poor people in the world, they'll never ever own a home unless something changes. So they got some money together and some friends together, and they built a house. And they put someone in a house they could not afford and showed them how to afford it. And then they built another one, and then they built another one. And eventually their organization came to be known what we call Habitat for Humanity. And they're all over the world, right? Over 800,000 homes they have either fixed up or built for people who would never own a home, all because of a broken heart. What breaks your heart? And for all of you who are going, that's great, I like that first question better because I think I can make more money with that first question. Can we go back to the first question for just a second? I know what you're thinking, right? How about this guy, Blake McCoskey? Do you know who this guy is? Blake McCoskey is a young entrepreneur. He's in Argentina on vacation, and he sees all these kids running around barefoot. And he starts asking questions, and he finds out that running around barefoot as a kid can create problems for you as an adult, especially in that culture. So he came back to the United States of America. He began a for-profit company that makes shoes. And then he created this new idea that, we've all heard of now, but it started with him in terms of he made it famous. This whole idea of a business model built around one for one. You buy one of my products, I'll give one away to somebody who can't afford it. We know it as Tom's Shoes, but the company is Tom's. Last year, he sold half the company. The entire company was valued at $625 or $630 million. A for-profit company born from a broken-hearted leader who thought something must be done about that. I think I'll go home and do it. They also announced last year that for every year going forward, they're going to release a new one-for-one product. Every time somebody buys one, somebody in some part of the world gets one for free. So leaders, if you want to figure out that thing that creates the context for bold leadership in your context, you've got to have an answer to the question, what breaks your heart? When my wife and I first talked about this about a year and a half ago, she came up with her version of the same question. Maybe you'll like this better. It's what would I like people to line up and thank me for? when I'm an old lady? What would I like people to line up and thank me for when my career's over? What would I like people to line up and thank me for when I can't serve or help anybody or hire anybody anymore? What would I like people to line up and thank me for? What's the answer to that question? If you'll hang on to these questions, if you'll hang on to that first question and you keep them front and center, those are breadcrumb questions that may lead you to the breakthrough idea, the breakthrough innovation, or the breakthrough shift in your current industry that may change your world, may change the world. Now, in closing, I want to leave you with a simple statement from an ancient Jewish leader who did an extraordinary thing. And in the midst of this extraordinary thing he did, he left us with a phrase that hangs in my home. I've repeated it 1,000 times. It's sort of the battle cry for our family, and in many cases, it's sort of the battle cry for everybody that works with me and around me. His name was Nehemiah. He lived, or this event happened about 444 BC. He lived in basically modern day Iran, in the ancient city of Susa. It was sort of the capital city of the Persian Empire. He worked for Artaxerxes. The thing, as he lived there, we don't know if he'd ever been to Judea or not. We don't know if he'd ever actually been to Jerusalem, even though he was a Jew. But he found out that the walls around his city had been torn down over 100 years before, and they'd never been repaired. And in ancient times, a city without a wall is no city at all. A city without a wall has no defenses. A city without a wall has no status. And it broke his heart that his city, that the gates were burned and the walls were torn down. It's an extraordinary story of leadership that was so important to the ancient Jews that it became part of their scripture. But it's a story of leadership. He gathers the resources. He actually goes to his boss and asks for time off, which, that's awkward now. That's really awkward, in 444 BC when he wasn't getting paid anyway, and your boss is the emperor. It's like, you want to do what? Let me get this straight. He said, I want to go home. I want you to help me resource rebuilding the walls around my city. He gets there. He casts an incredible vision. In fact, my little book, Making Vision Stick, that whole book is sort of an extrapolation of what Nehemiah said to the people that day when he motivated them and cast a vision to rebuild a wall that had been laying in ruins for over 100 years. It's a powerful, powerful little lesson. But then they began to rebuild the walls, and the surrounding people and the surrounding villages and the surrounding towns are threatened by the idea that Jerusalem would become an economic center again, that Jerusalem may be a gathering place for the Jews from all over the world. So they're threatened by this. So they attack the workers. They threaten the workers. They bribe the workers. They do everything they can to stop the reconstruction of the wall. But Nehemiah is a bold leader, and he's decided this has to happen no matter what. So the whole story is him fending off people, motivating people, keeping the workers safe, keeping the workers motivated. And finally, they're about to finish the wall. They're about to install the gates. And his enemies, the people that are trying to stop this work, finally come up with their one last ditch effort to stop Nehemiah. And do you know what they did? They invited him to a meeting. They started inviting him to meetings. They would send their the people that work for him, and Nehemiah's up on a ladder working on this wall. They say, hey, Nehemiah, hey, Stan Ballot, and the gang, we'd like to have a meeting. Do you have time to come to a meeting? Isn't it true that your schedule pretty much undermines oftentimes your potential to lean into the thing that you need to lean into the most? Did you know that did not start in the 20th or the 21st century? 5th century BC, 444 BC. Hey, could you come to a meeting? And in the middle of the story, that I'm done, this is so great. In the middle of the story, Nehemiah is up on the ladder working on that wall because he knows this is the thing I must get done, to the neglect of everything else. And he turns around to the group that's inviting him to a meeting, trying to distract him from the work. And he makes this statement: I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Let's just say this out loud together. Ready? I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you have discovered that thing that will be the breakthrough for you, your family, your industry, your business, your franchise, your division, your department. And there are so many distractions. And your battle cry needs to be, hey, I know that's important, I know that's important, I know that's important, I know that's important, but this is the one thing that must be done. This is the make or break for us. I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Bold leadership, clarity around an unreasonable commitment to what should be. So if you know what that thing is, do not let your calendar or your organization conspire against you, because your organization is organized to do what it's organized to do, and your calendar and your schedule has no sense of priority, none. Do not allow your calendar or your organization to conspire against you if you know what it is you need to do. If you do not, follow the breadcrumbs. Ask these 2 questions. Wrestle with these 2 questions with your team, with your family, with the people that you work with your board, with your leadership team. What is the one thing that we think is impossible to do? But if anyone figures this out, it's a game changer. We need to know the answer to that question, and we need to be on the lookout for someone who's messing around the edges who might actually answer it. And then once you know the answer to the question, what should be, then you announce to your world, I am doing a great work and I cannot and I will not come down. Thank you so much. This is going to be an incredible day. Hope to see you soon.